Hurricanes goaltender Petr Mrazek was taken off the ice after a collision with his teammate in the first period. He was holding his wrist in quite a lot of agony. Let's discuss the possible injuries he might have sustained. For those who don't know me, my name is Sonam, and I'm a resident doctor specializing in sports and exercise medicine. On this channel, I break down injuries as they happen so that an average fan can better understand them. Please be sure to like and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on my latest content. For now, let's get back to Peter's injury. So this is the play where Mrazek's teammate here is going to pretty much get down to slide to prevent the cross pass. And you're going to see as he tries to get up, he is going to completely run into his blocker hand on the right side. And you'll see, unfortunately, that Mrazek shakes off the actual blocker in agony. This is a better shot here. So if we look here, this is the play where Mrazek and his teammate, so pay attention to kind of where the leg impacts the blocker. He's going to come in, and his hand essentially falls in this way, and his teammate's leg impacts it, from what you're seeing, because he just completely lost control after he was trying to get up from a sliding play. And he impacts that blocker to quite a lot of extent. So let's go back here, actually, and I want to show you one more time the area of impact. So blocker hands down, and because the blocker hands down, it's protected, but he ends up getting just underneath. So these blockers kind of protect the anterior part of the hand, but if you get it underneath, you can still actually cause a lot of issues to the hand and the wrist itself. And that's where that impact was, right here. And you can see he's immediately down on the ground. He throws off the right blocker guard and calls for help. Now, unfortunately, we don't have actually any more information on the injury that Mrazek has sustained. The NHL isn't as forthcoming with injuries as, for example, the NBA. But based on this mechanism and based on how quickly he ran off the ice, I have a few suspicions of what is going on. First off, in one of the articles, I'm going to post up this quote here, but essentially they say that you can hear him screaming. And it's not something that you, like as fans, you want to hear when you're watching a game. So that leads me to believe that, this was a pretty severe injury, and I'd be worried about a fracture at that point in time. Now, when he was on the ice, I didn't actually see any deformity per se, but a scream plus an impact that big is always a fracture until otherwise ruled out. And here's the play from the top one more time. So this here will be where the impact happens. So it actually seems the leg didn't impact as much as his entire body. He kind of fell essentially onto his leg, and his legs scissored that wrist. Now that's still concerning with the amount of force that he went into him with, because then you're worried about whether or not, for example, there's a fracture or even a dislocation at the level of the elbow, just because you see his elbow is bent right here and his legs are scissoring at this time. And as we continue forward, he completely kind of crumples the arm and elbow area. So while we don't have any other information outside of the fact that Mrazek was taken out with an upper limb injury, let's think about the potential mechanisms and potential injuries that he could have sustained. So this is the back of the arm and your back of the hand. So essentially you're looking at it from this way. And that's how he'd be holding his blocker. So he'd have his blocker hand in there, and this would be the surface that'd be impacted by his teammate. Now with an injury of that speed and that collision, I'd be worried about a few things. Number one, you can definitely have a dislocation. So he had pads on and elbow pads on, but with that type of injury, we talked about him scissoring and almost sandwiching his elbow. You could definitely get an elbow dislocation, which is extremely painful. You put those back in, and usually after, as long as you rule out any other injuries to the area, for the most part, people rehab quite well from them. The other area that could potentially be impacted as well is the wrist area. You can get dislocations, not so much, but fractures. So that's the thing I'm most concerned of, especially because of the force that he was impacted with. You will see a lot of fractures of your radius and your ulna. And in adults, it does take a big amount of force to see fractures like that. Usually you'll see them when people fall on an outstretched hand, but you'll also see them when things impact, for example, like bats, for example, impact your forearms. And with how Mrazek was essentially hit by his teammate, I'd be suspicious of either a fracture at the radius or ulna, or at the actual joint itself, so involving maybe the distal or the end aspect of the radius. We'll go in here, the radius, the ulna, and the carpal joints. Fractures tend to be much more painful than, for example, soft tissue injuries. Fractures and dislocations, to be honest. And given the fact of the speed of impact and the fact that he was screaming in pain and literally ran off the ice, that's what I'm worried about. So his trainers would likely have looked at the area, made sure everything was in proper alignment, because usually you can tell a dislocation by looking at the joint. And if it's out of place, for the most part, you know. And he will have definitely received x-rays, and depending on what they found, he may be casted, he may be splinted, he may need surgery. We don't know right now. Unfortunately, it did look like a pretty serious injury. Now, once I have some updates, I will make sure to put them in the comments below. For now, I think he's going to be out until they figure out what exactly is going on, and hopefully we'll have more information in the next few days. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions or comments about this video, please leave them down below. For now, that's all.